move to accept the amendment of the agenda as submitted.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Approved. Okay. Does anyone have any comments on the meeting minutes? No? If we don't, then can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve minutes.
Support.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Motion carries. At this time, we'll open up the floor to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to have any public comment aside from things that are actually on the agenda? I do have one thing that was actually sent to me on August 9th. It's from Jacqueline Lafayette, and I'll read it to the rest of the commission. I apologize for not having a copy for each of you. It says, "To whom it may concern, as a regular pedestrian on a biking path, I'd like to know if there's a prescribed etiquette as to how bikers and walkers should advance in relation to each other. I've often been startled and at times nearly struck by silent moving cyclers approaching from behind. Some have had the courtesy to warn us of their approach either by ringing of a bell or by verbal alert. I will always thank them for such consideration. We would like to request a copy of the biking-walking path etiquette if one exists, and also that the article be published in the Eel Camera for the education benefit of all island citizens who wish to take advantage of this wonderful amenity. Sincerely, Jacqueline Lafayette." Well, Jacqueline, I did get I did a little bit of investigation. I know what I personally do, and it actually pretty much falls in line with what is called out in this pamphlet over here called What Every Michigan Bicyclist Should Know. It's a guide for bicyclists published by the League of Michigan Bicyclists. I have a web link actually on the commission section of the township website, so anyone that's watching tonight will be able to go over to our commission website. It's live right now, and you could download it, as well as if I can see if we can get a couple more paper copies up here at the township board. But there are a few sections in here that specifically address your concerns. On page 14, it talks about the rules of the path, guidelines for multi-use trails and paths. And I have a few things that I've underlined, so I'll share. Paths are often shared by walkers, joggers, the elderly, children, and babies, rollerbladers, and pets. So when you're cycling, you should always try to ride to the right, ride single file, and move completely off the trail if you're going to be stopping for rest or an emergency. You should always yield to other slower path users, including pedestrians. Control your speed, slow down, and use caution when approaching or overtaking other path users. And one other thing that you should be adding is that you should be giving a verbal alert saying passing on your left or ringing your bike bell. And that's actually what I do. I do both of them. It's just my personal, what I like to do. But I'm not sure if anyone else would like to comment on what they do if they're on a bike and they approach pedestrians, or if you're a pedestrian and what you actually would like to see from a cyclist standpoint.
Well, when I'm riding on the path, I always announce I'm behind them and I'm coming up to pass them on the left, so they're aware of my presence.
Great.
And sometimes when I bike, there are like 2 or 3 people who bike abreast, like on the left, talking, on the left. Oh, okay. So maybe they need to run a car. Oh well.
Yeah, there's the issue of distracted cyclists and distracted pedestrians. I've seen both out there with headphones on, and I'd advise anyone that's going to be using headphones, listening to music. I'm sure it's great for exercise, but try to keep the volume a little bit lower so that way you can hear if somebody's approaching, you can hear if there's vehicles and other things, so it's a matter of safety, and I encourage everyone to keep the volumes low if you're going to have the headphones on. It also goes to show that there's some cyclists that should not be on the path if they're going to be going very fast, and that's why we have people riding in the road, and it's completely legal for cyclists to be in the road. It also says that in the Michigan Vehicle Code. And anyone that wants to see that, again, it's within this pamphlet called What Every Michigan Bicyclist Must Know, a Guide for Bicyclists, published by the League of Michigan Bicyclists. And I will, or anyone else on this commission that would like to, we could, write a little thing in the EL camera, if anyone's interested.
We can do that together,
Great.
my daughter and I.
All right. Well, I don't see anyone else in the audience, so I think that we can close the public comment. And let's move on to the our feature presentation about the Groseal Free Bridge. Jane Fiegel and her daughter have put together this lovely presentation, and I look forward to seeing it.
Hello, I am Christina, and that's my mom, as you all know. And we made up a presentation about biker and pedestrian safety that's on the bridge. So, I'm going to get started. The first slide is the picture of the Groseal Bridge in all its glory. And what we hope to accomplish is to increase comfort as in terms of making the scenery more appealing to the bikers and pedestrians, improving safety and imagining our future of what could be when we make our bridge better. And this presentation brings our attention on our dire need to improve, increase, and imagine a better future for the residents and visitors of Groseal. By making changes, they can promote the beauty of our home, Groseal. And the next few slides are examples of pavements that needs to be redone. These are by the small parking space on the bridge. And as you can see on the left picture, it's uneven and cracked, and it's not safe, and it's not pretty either. The right picture shows broken curbs, which completely defeats the purpose of a curb because it's not there. Oh, and the picture. I'm getting mixed up with the slides. Okay. You can see the little orange string there. That shows the main part of the picture, just if you were wondering. And we noticed that the parking space for the bridge controller is not obstructing the sidewalk in any way. And the parking space is fine there, but it'd be great if the debris there was cleaned up. And the grates that are on the side of the road are unsafe to bikers that are on the road because they are parallel to the sidewalk instead of being perpendicular. Bike wheels could get stuck in the grate and injure the biker. So, yeah. This is an uneven piece of pavement in front of the small parking space that should be repaved. It doesn't have to because it's not hurting any of the bikers because they don't normally bike there, but it'd be nice if it could be. And these are obstructed sign locations. These aren't really connected to the bridge per se, but if you could just, it's not safe. So it'd be great if you could just either move the sign or the plants that cover the sign. On the west side of the bridge, as it meets the land, we found this uneven pavement with plants next to it, and we would like if it was cleaned up and repaved a little bit because, well, because it's uneven and someone could trip on it or something. And these are uneven pavement on the east side on the overpass that need repaving because, one, it's ugly, two, it's unsafe. And the next 4 slides portray hazardous and unappealing sections of the pavement. And the left picture shows on the top that there is plants that are hanging down and it could obstruct someone's vision or smack someone in the face. And the bottom part of the picture shows like plants that are making the sidewalk that the bikers and walkers walk and bike on smaller, so it's closer to the road and it's not safe. It could be more safe. And on the right picture, it's pretty much the same thing as the bottom of the left picture. It cuts down the space of the sidewalk. As you can see, it's almost the same as the last two pictures. It cuts down the space of the sidewalk, and it'd be great if you could just kind of clean up the plants and the debris there. The left picture shows more debris that could be cleaned up. Lots of debris. The top right picture shows a grate that is kind of out of view because there is a lot of trash and dead grass around it that could be removed so no one would trip on it because they didn't see it or something like that. And then on the bottom right picture you see uneven and broken pavement that either could be redone or could be just clean up the debris. We found this on the Trenton side of the bridge, and we thought this was very unsafe because someone could get confused between the left path and the right path because it looks like two paths. It'd be great if you could, repaint the white line and move the plants there and kind of fix the curb so it's less confusing. These are unappealing views of the bridge that we found. And the first picture, you see some sort of bottle that, losing my voice here, that has broken glass. I think it's broken glass, I'm not really sure, and rocks around it. And it's unsafe because someone could either step on it and it could injure their foot, or it could pop a tire. And the next picture shows 3 beams, I guess. I don't know what they're called. The beams there that are kind of sharp at the edges, and it could hurt someone. So it'd be great if you could put some padding or something on it. The next picture is just, it's ugly. Yeah, repaint it, please. The last picture shows that where what do they call them?
Moving and stationary.
Yeah, the stationary part of the bridge and the moving part of the bridge, where they meet, it's uneven, and someone could trip on it, or something bad could happen. And we found one of many holes on the bridge posts that meet the area between the road and the sidewalk, and this is not safe because small children could fall in, they're not paying attention, or someone could trip and fall, or something like that. And my mom noticed that there is some sort of platform closure thing that's preventing it from going all the way down to the water. But it's still not safe because someone could still fall down there, and someone could throw trash down there, and it wouldn't be good. So we thought if you could place some plywood or some other material on it to just kind of cover up the hole. And we have the guy on the right, the one with the hat, and the guy on the left was rollerblading, but the man with the hat fell down right after he took this picture from the poor condition of the sidewalk, and that is the perfect example of how unsafe the sidewalk is to bikers, pedestrians, rollerbladers, and so on. You can see the giant hand pointing to the man in the picture, and this is another example of walking your bike would be way safer than riding it on the bridge, just because of safety. And then these are ideas to make the bridge more pedestrian/biker friendly. You could add reflective tape to the sidewalk edges on the bridge because it adds the idea of safety to bikers and walkers that walk along the bridge. And it could also be safer for cars that are driving at night so they can see the sidewalk and they wouldn't hit the sidewalk. And you could repave the pavement and cut back shrubs and remove odd plants. Repaint the white lines on the road by the bridge and add signs like please walk your bike, etc. And as I said before, add plywood or other material to cover the holes on the bridge. And these are credits to the pictures on slide 3, like the lighthouse and the bridge and the island. And the lighthouse is Flickr Creative Commons photo by James Marvin Phelps. and the island is www.aerographics.com. The end. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our presentation. I really hope you enjoyed, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them as best I and she can. So.
I'd like to add one thing, unless you already said it. The holes of the bridge, you know how people are, it could be trash. That'd be a good idea to cover it. You're trying to make it pretty.
So, any questions?
Very excellent job. How long did it take you to put this together?
3 times practicing, and then we spent maybe 2 or 3 days working on it, improving.
So, that one.
Is your first PowerPoint job? Or?
I don't know the word, but PowerPoint that we actually presented, I think. First one.
Second time. And then she spoke in public in public before.
Well, your experience from the first time it shows. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Does anyone from the commission have anything that they'd like to add to the presentation, or possibly have questions?
Well, first of all, Christina, I want to thank you and your mom for putting this presentation together and bringing it to present to us and the residents of Grovedale. I think you brought up several very good points. I think some are probably above what this commission can do and or recommend, because the bridge is owned by Wayne County. But I do think that there are a couple things that we may be able to do that would help with that safety of the people on the bridge. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Christina, excellent job. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. And I think it would be in our best interest to get this to the folks of Wayne County as soon as we can to see what we can do to work together to get some of these issues improved.
Great.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That can be available anytime.
Great. So overall, I'm just going to reiterate what you had in there. Pavement conditions, specifically about the curb, the driveway. I've noticed that the driveway, again, that the automobile is clearly out of the way, but actually having those driveway slopes in that area creates an ADA problem with cross slope. So if there's a person in a wheelchair going out there, they're more likely to, first of all, they have to exert a lot more effort with one hand to try and maintain a straight line when going across that area. So they're likely to actually go out into traffic, especially if they're a little bit weaker, the conditions are icy, or there's a lot of gravel on that driveway. So it was a very good observation that you made about the driveway specifically. The grate, I've seen worse, but very good at pointing that out. The vegetative overgrowth and obstructing the signs, that's something that's a low-hanging fruit. Basically, what I'd like to do is, when we get into a study session or sometime in the future, identify with this specific project or any other concerns, basically 3 different tracks. Your low-hanging fruit, or things that are easily to be changed, your medium-term solutions, and then the long-term. And a lot of these that you mentioned, especially one of your last slides where you're talking about some of the recommendations, they fall more in line with the low-hanging fruit. So very good observations there. Obviously, the long term is when we get a new bridge, and making sure that we can increase the aesthetics and increase the pleasuring on the island. But one thing I'd like to add as well is that with walking your bike, the path is so narrow that you really can't walk your bike long side. You basically, at certain areas where you're going right across the pillar, you have to put the bike in front of you or behind you in order to continue walking. So when I've actually ridden,
That's not how I do it.
Yeah.
I get on my bike and put the bike on an angle. And I'm able to do that. But with the trailer, it's hard.
yeah, that's what I was getting to, is like it's almost impossible to walk your bike. So that's what I've done, and I've had a backpack on, and so I've got a little bit extra weight, and so you're kind of like, you're moving back and forth. One way you're trying to dodge the pillar, then you want to immediately go back the other way, so that way you're not having all your weight and accidentally topple over the bridge because of the low railing over there. So overall, a very good presentation, and we're going to look at this and put it on our website. as well try to share this with Wayne County, who is, the operator of the bridge. So thank you, great job. Okay, any other comments about the presentation before we move on? Great. Next, we'd like to have an update on the BPAC assessment by Mr. Valaquette.
Thank you, Brian. I've continued to work on the BPAC program, but to take a step backwards and give some people some background information on it, BPAC stands for Promoting Active Communities. It's a self-assessment program that we took on, and we are eligible to receive awards based on our community's assets. We assess ourselves in 14 different sections. They include community planning, ordinance, zoning, and codes, site plan review process, maintenance, programs, promotions, facilities for physical activity, policies and education for safety and security, bicycle facilities, public transportation, downtown area, shopping area, schools, neighborhoods, work sites, and the last section would be a summary of all that. This will take a lot of work to complete, and they advise you not to try to do it as an individual but as a group. As I review a lot of the information, I find that that's exactly what it's going to take. We have a lot of resources to review before we answer these questions, and it's a lot of information to go through, so it's going to take some time. I know that's a busy season right now, but August is not a very good month to do it with the activities and the vacation planning and everything that we're doing in our personal lives. So my intent is to start answering some of the questions through the fall and winter. I know that this is not going to be done in one sitting. It's going to take resources from all of our city planners to answer some of these questions. Community planning, for instance, is extensive. I'm not well versed in that, so we need to meet with the people who are planning that and get their thoughts on answering some of these questions. So the process is moving forward. It's just a slow curve right now to really get our information so we can answer these questions.
Great. Would you feel that you benefit from having additional people helping you with this, making it a subcommittee? Maybe you can tackle, some of the topics that might be of interest to you, and maybe there's a couple others that others on this commission would be, interested in looking into, and that way the burden isn't completely on you. I recognize that it's very interesting content, but I want to make sure that we're not overwhelming you with too much to do. You got another job as well.
Well, this is an extensive survey, and there's a lot of questions that are just so far out of my scope that it's going to take a lot of interaction with the people who are well versed in it to get their opinions on this and to answer some of these questions. So it's going to take a lot of meetings, a lot of review. It's a slow process, but it's an extensive process. The PAC survey will help this community market itself, not just in biking and pedestrian activities, but across the board. This should be a community concern, not just for our commission, but across the board for everybody, because we'll use this PAC survey to market ourselves and try to draw people into the community. So I think this will take a life of its own across the board. Everybody will get involved in it. The township board, I'm sure, will use this later to try to market us, and it's important that we do a good job here. So it's not just, even though we've initiated this just isn't our project. I think it's going to morph into a project the township will take on and use it as a very powerful tool to market ourselves. I think it's a huge asset. It's free, it's extensive, and it'll help us understand the community and its weaknesses and its strengths, and it'll be a great tool for us. So I would like to motion that we have maybe a study session, other than at the commission meeting, to start looking at this and maybe break it down and prioritize what we need to do and when we need to do it.
Eric, refresh my memory. Has anything about the PAC gone before the board specifically?
No, what I was just going to recommend is I think that Al's idea of a study session to break this down and kind of get a game plan around it would be a really good idea. And I think the outcome of that should be kind of an action plan, who we need to do what by when, and then we would want to get that to the board for a formal resolution from the board supporting the process. And that way we would, the board would know exactly what's going on, all the various department heads would know exactly what's going on, and we'd be able to pull the support where needed from the various commissions and department heads within the township. So I think that could be very easily done with just a quick one-page outline to the board saying this is, these are the benefits, this is what it's going to take, and we'd like to do it for these 4 reasons.
I think so too. The PAC website is very extensive. They're very helpful, and they have a staff that will help us on a lot of these difficulties we're going to have answering the extensive questions. So just forwarding anybody that's interested to this website, it answers a lot of their questions. And if they do their homework, they're going to be well informed. The website is MyHealthTools, MyHealthTools.org. That website is very extensive. It takes a lot of reading to get through it, but it's a huge asset to us. I encourage anybody who's interested to go to that website. That is on our link to the township website. If you follow through to the commission, it will give you a link to that. Once you're in that link, have fun. Just start reading. There's a lot to read. Sections like frequently asked questions, resource guide, registering your community. We can even review our own assessment as we go. So this is a huge tool for us. It's just that it takes a while to get through it. So anybody who's interested needs to kind of bury themselves in it and start educating themselves. This is such a tool. I'm so excited that we can do this, but it's going to take time.
Great. Does anyone else have questions for Mr. Bellaquet?
No, I think his idea of a study session, maybe a subcommittee to look into this and kind of come up with what I would call a mini project plan to help present and kind of set out a timeline with expectations would be a good idea. And I'd be willing to do that with Al.
Great.
Thank you.
The mentioning of a study session is going to come up quite often over here, and it's actually one of our items to talk about later tonight, so this won't be the last you hear of it. Now I'd like to move on to the Horse Mill Shared Use Path. We've got an update, and I think it's good news. And Mr. Ranko, would you care to inform us?
Sure, thanks. Unfortunately, Gary Bailey's unable to attend tonight. He's done most of the legwork here in the last few weeks to kind of bring this to a head. But just to remind everybody, the Horse Mill bike path is really where the board has directed the fund, the existing millage funds to go. The initial estimates came in for that path in the $200,000 range. At that point in time, we had close to $270,000 in the fund, which seemed like it was a no-brainer. However, since the engineering has been done on that path, a number of other issues have come up that are more drainage related and then utility movement related. In addition to that, the original path that we had proposed was to a more updated standard, which is a 10-foot path with a 2-foot shoulder. The standard Grosjean path is more like an 8-foot path with no shoulders. So in order to get this in and to get it around, there's really a couple of things that need to happen. Number one is we need support from some drainage funding, which is controlled by the DPS, and we did have a resolution that went to the DPS. They are in concurrence with using some of the drainage fund to assist with this, and specifically Wayne County, in order to permit this, is requiring some drain updates under the Park Lane and Horse Mill intersection. Not at all related, or not at all part of the bike path, but actual drain improvements under there, which has been an issue and which makes several of the properties around there fairly wet. So the DPS has supported that, which will help this project get through from a Wayne County permitting standpoint. From a rebid standpoint, Gary has indicated that he will work with the building department to get a new bid package submitted, which has this two things: one, more updated timing-wise, since the original bid went out close to a year ago, and then number two, will make the bid standard and closer to the standard 8-foot Grosse-Ile bike path. At the end of the day, when that is done, the bids are back in. And we've got some more permit updates on the drainage issues with Wayne County. We should be able to make this a reality. The problem is that it's going to be very, very tight, next to impossible, but I'm still holding out a little bit of hope that it could happen this year. More likely it would happen, some of the grubbing and clearing would be done over the winter and late fall, and the path would more likely go in the spring. But I would like to push this post-haste, since this has been around for as long as it has, to try and get this in this year, if at all possible. So a big thanks to Gary Bailey for working with the staff here in the township, and then also to the DPS Commission for recognizing the importance of this and offering to help out with the engineering and with the drainage as required by Wayne County. So the good news is it looks like we're going to be able to make this happen. The bad news is it may not be till next spring that it actually goes in, but we'll work to see what we can do to get it in yet this year. And obviously, as we approach the end of the summer, the asphalt plants shut down in usually around November 15th. So weather will have a big impact on what happens here.
We can definitely get a lot done in advance for prepping the land, even if we can't get the asphalt down.
Yes, prepping the land and then getting the final approval through the board level.
Great. So one question I have is, do we need another recommendation to the board to proceed tonight, or does the one that we did before last month still stand?
The one last month was to DPS to get them to investigate the drainage, which they have answered back to us that they are in favor of doing that. We still have the approval from the board for the bid process. So really the next step is to get the bids in and then go to the board with a final recommendation of contractor selection and funding.
Okay.
And then again, just to remind everybody, funding is in the bike path construction fund that currently exists and has been in existence for roughly 15 years.
Well, I have my opinions on this, but I'd like to get inquiries from the rest of the commissioners here. So is there anything that you guys would like to add to this comment? Questions for Mr. Ranka?
It's an idea that we can prepare this fall, get it ready, and then get brand new asphalt in the springtime. Because I'm afraid we'll ruin the asphalt in the fall. So let's go for spring, meaning the final thing.
That's more than likely what would happen anyways, but I feel that we should be moving ahead with this based on how long it's been taking. There's been unanimous support so far. So, Rob, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to point out to those viewers that are at home the fact that the funds are already set aside. It wouldn't change anything with their taxes. This money's been village proposed in past years ago. It's sitting in a bank account drawing very little interest, and we can only utilize it for bike paths. So there's no sense of not utilizing it.
Aaron, anything you want to add? Al?
The only comment I would like to make is that I would like to see it completed this year. I think our chances are getting sooner and sooner every day. One benefit to putting in the sub work before we put the blacktop down is the drainage is always going to be an issue, and I think there's a lot of guesswork in this drainage. Once the drainage is in, if we have to make corrections, it's nice to have a winter to watch it to see if it works properly before we have to possibly make changes to it before the blacktop's down. So that could benefit us. That is one benefit to waiting with the substructure in. We get to field test it before we lay the blacktop. And like I say, once the blacktop's down, there's not much chance to get anything corrected because of cost. So there is a benefit there that the drainage will be tested through the winter to make sure that it's done properly before we lay blacktop. So keep that in mind also. That generally it's a good thing to test stuff before you seal it in and are unable to correct it once it's done.
Great. I know that I spoke with Mr. Bailey as well earlier today, and he'd mentioned that the next step would be getting Sohail to move ahead with the actual bids. So do we need to do any sort of motion tonight as far as to let him do the bids? Because I know that that can cost some money as well.
So the bid redo should not be an issue. However, you bring up a good point. Just to confirm that he's got the authority to do that. I think it probably would behoove us to make a quick resolution that we authorize Gary Bailey to work with the township staff to to redo this bid and get it out.
Okay. And would that go before the board?
It wouldn't have to. It would just come through here. We've already got the authorization for bid through the board.
Great.
So this is just really an update to the bid because the other bid is as old as it is.
Okay. Any other questions before we I ask for someone for a motion?
The drainage, you check and make sure if it's working. Will it cost more to have extra temporary asphalt? How much would that cost?
I think Al was talking about just the base, the sub base, rather than putting any pavement on there. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
No, what I was making mention to is the drainage. Once it's in, we have the whole winter to check it to make sure that it's done properly and to make sure that we're not missing anything or need to adjust anything, because once the blacktop's down, it's down. We won't have the funding to go back and make corrections. So that's just a benefit to not being able to finish it.
Looks like it might actually work out in our favor this way. So can we have a motion to authorize Mr. Gary Bailey to work on these bids?
So I'll just read something very briefly. Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission supports Gary Bailey working with the township staff to rebid the horse mill bike path as originally approved by the township board.
Great. Do we have any support?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Excellent. So the next item is what I'm calling the park bench. It's an area that will be reoccurring, agenda item, and it belongs for the miscellaneous issues that we've been hearing about at our various commissions, as well as through letters or other public comment. I call it that because we want to identify and let the public know that we're still thinking about these issues, and we want to put them in a central place, and then properly plan and make strategic choices about when to move forward with these. So sometimes we're going to have more information to present on these, and other times we might not. So based on that, we have 5 items on the park bench as of right now. Fountains, which Mr. Gary Bailey had mentioned before, mile markers, which he had mentioned, as well as I was looking into. The meridian path intersections, basically sight distance issues. Ms. Hinnelsbach had mentioned that. We also have the idea of a possible blog, as well as looking into bike rack locations. So I'm not sure if there's any that we want to move forward with right now. Gary isn't here this evening, so I'd say that we don't talk about the fountains or the mile markers tonight. Aaron, do you have anything that you'd like to bring up as far as the path or the blog or the bike rack locations?
Yeah, I think I'd like to talk about the path intersections and then also the bike rack locations, but I'll be brief, just to bring it to the attention of the rest of the group. So I don't know if anyone's noticed, but when you're writing down the bike path along Meridian, there are many stop signs, and a good majority of them are blocked by trees or shrubs or something. And so at first I saw this and thought, well, they're not really helping if they're completely obstructed. But then also, if you notice that the cross traffic, their stop signs are before the bike path, and then the road parallel to the bike path, Meridian, doesn't have all the stop signs that the bike path has. So I'm wondering if those are even necessary. And I realize this might be a bigger conversation, but I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the group and see if anyone else had thoughts on that.
Jane, do you have any comments on that, or do you understand?
How does it match? Like, I'm driving on Bellevue, okay, and I see a stop sign, and there's a sign here. So what's the point?
So you're driving on Bellevue, and you won't see, well, you'll see a stop sign, but it'll be before the bike path. But the bike path also has a stop sign, but the road parallel, which is Meridian, does not have a stop sign. So I'm wondering, why does the bicyclist need to have the stop sign there and come to a complete stop? It seems to me that they would just be able to...
Oh, we're missing a stop sign for the driver.
But I don't know that the driver necessarily... The drivers on Meridian don't necessarily need a stop sign. I just don't feel that the bicyclists need a stop sign. Maybe they can just yield and continue on, which, quite frankly, is what everyone does anyway.
People don't follow signs. I see it all the time. Let them find out for themselves. And be a role model, too. When you bike, you be a role model.
Aaron, you bring up a very good point. I think the idea behind the signs is more to get people to pay attention that they may be now crossing an active roadway versus just, being on the bike path and not having to worry about any kind of cross traffic. So it's all signs are a little inconsistent. So I see what you're saying, but I think that's the intent of those signs is just to get people to recognize that they're now crossing a roadway and they need to look both ways.
Okay.
Rob, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I just wanted to bring up the point, or reinforce the point you said about signs being blocked by growth. I've had a couple people point that out to me, not only on the bike paths, but also on some of the sidewalks, that there's trees and shrubbery that are either hanging down or into the side of the path so much that you have to veer out of your way, so it's a little bit dangerous. And I guess I was wondering what are the plans, or what should they do to report that kind of stuff?
Well, yes, Jane?
Actually, just last month, I was biking one day and I noticed there's a hanging dead branch. I'm in the next room. So I contacted by BPAC, about recycling place, and she took care of it like that day.
Yeah.
So if you want, let me know and I'll let her know.
I was just wondering if the township itself has any standard, monthly review of sidewalks and bike paths or whatever for that kind of stuff, or should they?
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason we're here. to be that clearinghouse and to come up with what's the policy, what's the plan. Do we put boots on the ground via this commission to come back once a month or once a quarter or whatever the time frame is to identify what those issues are to the township.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that as well. I have not heard of them going out there on a periodic basis and doing routine scanning, but I would think that I know firsthand that I've seen where some of the signs have been knocked down because of a vehicle hit a pole, and I emailed Barry at the DPS department and let them know, and they thanked me for the comment, and I believe within a week they had it back up there. So there's a variety of ways currently that if anyone sees anything out there that they could get a hold of the township, either contact any of us on this commission, or you could talk to DPS or any other staff at the township, and we'll try and get it there. But if you're coming across some roadblocks, we'd like to hear about it, and we'll make sure that your comments get heard. Al, do you have anything that you'd like to add about the?
I have a few things to keep in mind. I've contacted the county as a police officer on 2 occasions through Tony Gray. We've asked them to maintain the county roads. Now, there's a difference between our township property and the county property. County is responsible for maintaining their roadways and their signage. So they were asked to come in and clear back the shoulders of the roads, the primary roads, which they control. They're very slow to do it, and we've brought it up again. keep in mind that on a bike path, that's township property, and it's really our obligation to clean it. The roadway will be the county. In general, the bike path, unless it goes on the county easement, is our responsibility. So keep that in mind. I don't know that the DPS wouldn't come in and clear the bike path issues, but we need to contact the county for the road issues, and we're very well aware of it at the police department. We contact them on a regular basis. For site distance issues, we do surveys, and we've contacted them several times. Unless a tree comes down, they don't prioritize it, so they're very slow to move on it. Also, I've noticed as I use the bike path, the signages they seem to be put in at difficult heights. Some of the stop signs are too high for the younger pedestrians and bicyclists to see. Some of them are as high as 8 feet high. It's not at eye level, and they ideally should be at eye level. The older bicyclists are generally drivers, and they're very well aware of entering a roadway, and they're cautious. But the younger pedestrians and bicyclists aren't, and that's why these signs should be set lower. If you go down, like Manchester has the issue, Bellevue has the issue, Macomb has the issue, so we need to adjust our signage so it's right at eye level. I would think ideally about 50 inches is the right height. As they put signs in, I noticed that they're not doing that. They're not putting them at the ideal height. One other issue is that anytime we ask for signage on Wayne County's property, they have to issue a traffic control order to put that sign in. That makes that sign legal and binding, so we can enforce that signage. So when we want to sign the county property, we need to request that they implement a traffic control order for that sign, and they keep that on file. It will be their responsibility to maintain it and to make sure that it's working properly. So keep that in mind. County easement and bike path easement are two separate issues. So try to separate the two when you think about that. If any issues for the county is forwarded to me, I will contact the county and ask them to address it. Anything in the bike path, I would suggest that we go through Barry and have maybe somebody from the DPS first check it for validity, and then take the action needed, either to check it again because it's not quite ready to do, or to maintain it by removing it. It's a big issue on, especially Grosvenor Parkway. The foliage is impeding on the shoulder of the road, which causes pedestrians and bicyclists to enter the roadway. So it causes a problem there. We'd like it to be cut back, and that's how we've addressed it. And we haven't seen much action on that so far. But again, I will move forward to recontact them. Tony Gray also does the same thing. He contacts them via email, so we have copies of it, and we ask them to address the issues.
One thing I have a question about, I'd like to maybe clarify, is the path itself generally sits within Wayne County road right-of-way. That's how come we have to go through Wayne County permits, especially when we're crossing the roads. So if you have a stop sign for crossing, let's just say, Grays Drive, both Meridian and Grays are county roads, and the stop sign is more than likely in the right-of-way of both those. But you're saying that if it was for a path specifically, the stop sign for the path, then if it was in county right-of-way, then we'd be taking it to the county, but if it wasn't, then we'd be contacting Barry or contacting you, or I'm just trying to figure out, I would think that in almost all cases that the signs and the path are going to be in county right-of-way itself. So when would you care to?
Well, you separate it simply by we're putting the stoppage, the signage on the bike path. That makes us responsible for it. When they sign the roadway for vehicles, that's their responsibility.
Okay.
To put that sign in for them on the roadway, they need a traffic control order, and their engineers will make one. They're not going to maintain signs we put in. They're just not going to do it. So we have to be diligent when we put a sign in that we're going to maintain it, so even though it's on their county easement, it's not their signage.
Okay. Eric, do you have anything that you'd like to add to the conversation?
Nope.
Well, I'll add a little bit, and I thank Aaron for bringing this up because I've thought about it quite often. The stop signs themselves, a lot of new ones have been just recently put in. There's actually stop bars. But when you look at the standards put out by AASHTO for bike facilities, the bike lanes as well as the shared use paths or bike path in this case, typically should have the same type of right-of-way given to it as vehicles along the road. So if you're traveling along the bike path on Meridian and you're getting ready to cross Grays, you should have the right-of-way, not the vehicle on Grays. But we're putting in stop signs in those locations, so both the vehicle and the cyclist have to come to a stop. And if you don't, then essentially we are encouraging people, and we know that people aren't stopping, we're essentially setting up a rule that we're encouraging people to break the law. And I kind of have a problem with that, especially since cyclists have more of a burden with starts and stops. So, Aaron, when you were talking about yielding, that's something that's been brought up a lot. I know that in Idaho, there's actually a state law that allows cyclists to treat a stop sign as a yield. It's called the Idaho Stop, and basically, you still have the stop sign up there, and generally this is for on the road specifically. You still have due diligence that you need to be scanning the intersection and make sure that there's no one else there, but you don't have to come to a complete stop. And I think that's generally what people are doing all across the country and right here in Grosse Ile. So if we were going to continue with the stop signs, I would like to at least investigate some sort of policy change so that way, 95% of all cyclists on the road aren't, breaking the law. And the other thing that I did notice specifically is at Macomb and Meridian, which is a traffic-controlled intersection. You actually have the pedestrian signal for the walk and don't walk, but yet there's a stop sign right at the intersection as well. So it's like a mixed message there. And if that wouldn't fly, if that was actually a stop sign for the cars on that road, so I think we should be looking at that as well. But I digress a little bit. And I think this is something that we should be looking at within our long-term planning. So if no one else has anything to mention about that, we're going to keep this on this list, as well as make sure we have a note for look at policies for reviewing sign installation, as well as look at any policies about periodic surveying of the facilities to ensure that there's no maintenance issues.
You've got 95% of the bikers break the law. Why can't you just change it to yield?
Yep.
Right?
It's a very good point, and that's something that I'd like to explore as well. I just, I wanted to identify the specific problem, and then we can look at the solution later.
Brian, keep in mind that generally it's considered that when you're on a roadway, you have to follow the laws of the roadway. So one of the laws is that before entering a roadway, you must come to a complete stop. So as a bike enters the roadway, it must follow that law. So technically, that's the hitch there. They say that you have to stop before entering that roadway. Mm-hmm. So they have to follow all the laws of the road once they're on the road, even though because they're a slow-moving vehicle, they have priority. They have to follow the rules of the road. That's why when a bicyclist on the road goes through an intersection without stopping, they've actually violated a law saying that they must stop. So they have to follow the rules of the road when they're on it. I think it's become a courtesy on most people just to allow them to go through the intersection. But technically, that's what it would come down to. You have to follow every rule of the road when you're on the road. When you get onto a bike path, you don't have to. Mm-hmm. So there's always a conflict there.
I completely agree with you. We need to, make sure that we're following the law first and foremost. Otherwise, what's the point of having the laws? But I want to mention again that AASHTO, which is American Association of State and Transportation Highway Officials, which is composed of public safety, so fire and as well as police, engineers, planners, DPS workers. They came together and they did the pedestrian guidelines as well as the bicycling guidelines, which were just updated, and they specifically mentioned that in not in all cases that there be a stop sign, and in the spirit of complete streets, I would think that in certain cases, you need to rate the pathway just the same as you rate your road. So, Meridian Road gets the public right-of-way in most cases. You're not stopping at every single intersection on Meridian Road. The same could be said for the path as part of Meridian Road. I mean, I understand that there's two different entities, taking care of, the road versus the path, but essentially it's still part of the same system. It's still within the public right-of-way. And I would just like to entertain the notion of looking at that. I by no means do I want to come in and just say, let's get rid of this rule, let's get down all the stop signs now. I think we need to look at it, logically and see if there's merit in it. Maybe there's not.
There's actually a current article in the League of Michigan Bicyclists talking about that issue, and they are recommending changes right now. So it's on their mind. So let's see if they change the law and make it more bike friendly.
Great. Anything else? All right. Let's move on to the next topic. It's one of the last ones here, so we're coming to a close here. I would like to entertain the notion of having a study session for our next meeting. This would be so that way we can basically brainstorm and basically look at the issues that we have here on the park bench as well as other ideas that we might have and start to build a game plan and an action plan for the next year, and at least start the notion of building a comprehensive non-motorized transportation plan for the island. This way, we can start to benchmark ourselves, see if we're meeting the mark, and go about things logically and make sure we're not missing anything. I think so far we've got great enthusiasm. I'm very excited a lot of the issues we have, but I'm also a little concerned that we could, be neglecting one of these. So I think we should be developing an action plan, and I want to hear if anyone else, agrees with me or if they disagree with me.
So I think it's a great idea. Really kind of setting the goals for the year, right? Because if we don't set, 5 or 6 specific goals, we'll just take whatever issue comes in front of us on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and the next thing you know, the whole year will be gone. So I think it's a great idea to get really a futuring session and get 5 or 6 goals on the books.
Great. Al?
I think it's very necessary.
Jane?
We need to add that.
Exactly. We need to be looking at education, we need to be looking at engineering, as well as looking at funding sources, looking at maintenance. So basically we need to just think of all the issues that we have and figure out what we can do quickly and what's going to be more of a long-term goal. Rob, any comments?
No, I think it's a necessity to do that for next year, as was stated, 5 or 6 goals, and then a timeline to accomplish them and prioritize them.
Aaron, anything?
I think it's a great idea. I think we should have an avenue to where the public can give. I guess I realize they're welcome to come to this meeting anytime, but maybe on the website we can have a place where they can give their comments as well, because something that they have might be, it might take priority over some of our ideas.
Very